Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Some Real Shit Podcast, the podcast that talks about everything that probably has to do with me and my issues, and Tamika's issues. So, today's topic is about pain, and we have Dr. Mitchell Yaz on the show. Dr. Yaz is he's a physical therapist who studies physics and strength training, and he's here to teach me about all the issues that I am misdiagnosed with and how to deal with it and how to survive. And he is literally, guys, he is on some real shit. Like, an unbelievable doctor who's ready to tell you like it effing is, okay? And only on this show do we do some real shit. Take a listen. Stay tuned. Like and subscribe. Here we go. Welcome to Some Real Shit Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to see where this podcast goes, just based on the name.
Yeah, I just want to deal with people that are on some realness, that's all.
I like it. I am a very down-to-earth, very real person. I speak in peopleese. You'll know exactly what I'm telling you.
I hear it already. Tell the listeners a little bit about it yourself.
So in terms of this thing that I've developed, this method of diagnosing and treating pain, it's actually been a lifelong promotion. And basically, when we start as a child, I was very thin kid, had a lot of self-esteem issues. By the time I hit 26, I had spent 10 years trying to lift weights and put muscle on, couldn't. I eventually remembered I had taken a high school physics course and literally applied the laws of physics to weightlifting, which allowed me to put on 40 pounds of muscle over 40 years. I went from 160 pounds to 200 pounds. Just at this time, my original profession, I was a project manager construction, didn't find it to be very fulfilling. And I found out about this thing called physical therapy. So as I'm completing this understanding, I'm entering physical therapy school. While I'm in physical therapy school, I start to realize that a lot of what's being taught doesn't really match what it should be if you're thinking about things from a logical perspective. And so as I get to the point where I'm going to start treating people, I would think anyone in my position, if someone's having pain, the first thing you'd say is, so can you tell me where your pain is? Point to your pain. And what I notice is that where people are pointing to their pain isn't where the pain should be. If that MRI identified herniated disc or stenosis or arthritis were to create pain. So if the pain isn't where it should be based on the structure identified, it would mean that structure can't be causing that pain. And as a result, being a moral and ethical person, I said, you know what? I'm going to try to follow this path of interpreting the symptoms. And what I was able to figure out is that in more than 98% of cases, the tissue responsible for people's pain was muscle. And then the great part was I had just taught myself this understanding of physics and strengthening. I used that understanding to resolve the muscular deficits people were experiencing, and I was getting people better in a treatment or two. And this became the basis of the method that I have been working with and trying to hone and perfect for the last 30 years.
So do you think that what you eat affects the muscles that causes like pain?
So when it comes to eating really relates to the health of all your systems. So if someone, and if we're going to talk about it affecting the health of all muscles, the average person I come in contact with has pain at their knee or their shoulder, their hip. It's one point of their body. So it would be very hard to say that something of a systemic nature, like the food they're eating, is responsible for pain at just your knee or your lower back. So I would rather say that what you eat, the level of nutrition you have, the vitamins, the minerals, the macronutrients, those all affect the general health of the body. But I cannot say that it is a direct factor in what's causing pain for the vast majority of people that I treat. It's not to deny that it's not important to eat well, but I can't say that eating is what you want to focus on to resolve your knee pain, shoulder pain, hip pain, back pain, or neck pain.
Well, the reason why I asked that is because I noticed that there has been a lot of studies and commercials saying that if you eat, or an association between tomatoes and arthritis pain.
Right. So
So that,
most likely the people who were saying that are either don't make money on tomatoes or they're selling something that's anti-tomato. And they know lots of people eat tomatoes, so I can sell you a product that supposedly addresses arthritis. Can I explain what really causes osteoarthritis? And it'll help you make sense.
I think it's lectin. I believe it's one of those
Yeah.
um, things. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would
But
say that's pure crap. It just simply doesn't. I need you to appreciate people say lots of things, but that
mhm,
doesn't make it logically true.
right.
So I will tell you what logically makes sense. So let's say we're looking at your knee and we have your thigh bone sitting on top of your lower leg bone. And the way God created, or evolution, whatever you want to believe, created your joint, it made it so that 100% of your thigh bone is touching 100% of your lower leg bone. So 100% of the force of gravity running through your knee runs through 100% of the congruency. Those two bones are touching perfectly. But if you have weakness or imbalance, you start to get what's known as a misalignment of the joint surfaces. If your hamstring tightens or your quad tightens, there's a shifting of those two bones. And now 90% of the joint surfaces are taking 100% of that force. That's not a good equation for you. So as a result, there is too much force on the joint surface and it starts to eat away what is called hyaline cartilage, the cartilage that sits at the end of the bone that's responsible for taking the load. Once the hyaline cartilage is worn away, you have bone exposed. Exposed bone either causes greater erosion of bone or hypertrophic bone growth, making of more bone. That is the process of osteoarthritis. That is why osteoarthritis exists.
So is there a possibility of creating like a cartilage that will be able to go in between those those to help out? This is just like a layman question.
No, no, that's a good question. It's people are being manipulated into thinking that that's where we need to go. So there is a cartilage that there's two types of cartilage. There's hyaline cartilage that sits at the ends of the bones, but then between the bones, there's a spongy cartilage called a meniscus, fibrocartilage. So what the world is being told is that when you have pain at your kneecap, let's say, and they
Mhm,
take a magical x-ray or MRI, they say, oh, you've eaten away all your meniscus. You need to have a joint replacement. Well,
mhm.
if you had eaten away, in fact, all your meniscus, that would mean that the space between those two bones is no longer there, that you are, in fact, bone on bone. There's zero joint space. And if that were to occur, you would have to have a major loss of range of motion because you need that joint space to be there for you to bend your joint. And so as a result of that, the physical presentation of bone on bone is a loss of range of motion substantial. And at that end range, if I try to push harder, it feels like a bone is hitting another bone. I have been doing this for 30 years. I treated 15, 16,000 people. Over that period of time, two people have presented as being bone on bone. The other 5, 10,000 people who were told they were bone on bone were not bone on bone. And the cause of their pain was muscular. And I fixed them in a treatment or two. They were lied to.
And what is your actual title? I know I saw that, but it's mostly a doctorate of physical therapy.
It's very important to understand this. That is my credential.
Hmm.
From day one, I recognized that my education, my medical education, was basically worthless crap because it's all part of the same medical promotion that the cause of your pain can be identified through diagnostic testing.
Hmm.
That's nonsense. It's actually baseless. The MRI is baseless, theoretically, clinically, and scientifically. What is real is the symptoms your body presents as part of the emergency distress system of the body. So, what I'm telling you is if you want to know what tissue's creating your pain, you have to look at the symptoms presented. And I have shown in more than 98% of cases that tissue is muscle. So, therefore, you can strengthen muscle regardless of what's shown on an MRI.
Okay, so let me give you my symptoms then.
I love it. Bring it on.
All right, let's test it. So I was diagnosed with cervical stenosis and I'm having a brain fart. It's DD, what is it? Degenerate disc disease.
Degenerative disc disease, correct.
Right. And then I have lumbar issues, which my lumbar. Now, mind you, I'm a little pudgy in the front. So my chiropractor always says it has to do with your stance. So it might be what's affecting your back. But, and then suddenly I have carpal tunnel. So I have to sleep with a brace and I have to walk around with a copper bracelet every day. So that being said, I mean, that's just a part of what I have.
You want me
That's
to
it.
you want me to explain that whole thing to you?
Yes, sir.
This is kind of easy. So, you mentioned about stenosis and degenerative disc disease. You're saying that's in your lumbar spine?
That is in
The cervical spine.
cervical stenosis, and the degenerate disc is in the lumbar.
The degenerative is in the lumbar. Right. Okay. So first off, where's your pain?
My pain is in the pain is mostly in my back, lower back.
Right.
The numbness and the tightness is in my neck, my right neck. Yeah.
Right.
And they say
Okay.
it's because I'm always laying on my right side.
So the pain is on the right side, or the numbness is on the right side of your neck.
Yeah.
Does it go down to your hand, or it's just in your neck?
It goes down to my hand. Yeah, that's where they say that I have the carpal tunnel.
Yeah.
My
But the numbness is enhanced if you're laying on your right side, you're telling me.
Yeah, that's why I have to wear a brace at night.
Right. But then when you stand, let's say you stand up, then the symptom goes away.
Absolutely.
Right. So let's show you some magic about how moronic what you've been told is. Number one, if in fact you had carpal tunnel syndrome, that would indicate the carpal tunnel is a space between the bones of the wrist, which are called carpals. And then there is this kind of connective tissue band that runs above that or on the palm side, and your tendons and it's something called the median nerve run through that. Okay. So they're going to try to tell you have compression of the median nerve at the wrist causing your symptoms. Is that correct? That's what the carpal tunnel is.
Yeah.
Right? The problem is you just told me it starts at your neck and it runs down to your hand.
Well, yeah, that's what I tell them.
Right. But they're trying to tell you that the cause of it is from the wrist to the hand. But your symptoms are above the wrist. So if it's above the wrist, how can something at the wrist be calling something above the wrist? That's actually impossible. Wouldn't you acknowledge that? Doesn't that sound kind of stupid?
Hey, I don't have a PhD, my friend.
You don't need any of that stuff. That's the point. My point to everybody is anybody could understand this crap. This is not fancy. This is all bullshit. It's all presented to you as fancy. You go to $1 million machine and I show you a fancy picture. And the whole thing is it's all coercive. It's all with an intent to try to get you to say, well, this is too hard for me to understand, so I got to do whatever they tell me to do. That's the premise. Then there's a guy like me. I'm smarter than them, and I could explain things in a way that you could understand it, right? So I'm telling you logical stuff, and you got to say, well, since nerves run from the neck away all the way down to the hand, if you're having a symptom above the wrist, higher towards the neck than the wrist, that can't come from a nerve that starts at the wrist, the compression at the wrist. That's impossible. So that takes care of that. Next, degenerative disc disease. All that is that there's increasing arthritic changes occurring at the spaces between your vertebrae. Here's a little study for you. Of the people over the age of 60 who do not have back pain, 90% are diagnosed to have degenerative disc disease. So what do you start to learn? Degenerative disc disease and stenosis, which is simply means narrowing between the vertebrae. These are
Hmm.
just degenerative processes occurring because you don't know enough about strength training to keep your muscles in the front and the back of your body equally strong, and the muscles on the side of your side to keep optimal alignment of your joint surfaces so they function properly. So without that knowledge, you're just going to continue to have degeneration, and decay. That's why you have those things. That has nothing to do with your symptoms. Okay. Next,
Hmm.
if in fact they were coming from your cervical spine, when is gravity pushing down on your cervical spine? When you're laying down on your side or when you're standing up? Clearly, when you're standing up.
Yeah.
So why aren't your symptoms there when you're standing up and not when you're laying down? Because they're not from stenosis or degenerative disc disease. That's why. Right? You see how this all is making sense? I'm giving you just logic. You don't have to be a
Right.
doctor. Know what that I'm just telling you the way the body works. And then you start to say, wow, my symptoms don't sound like they're what coming from the tissues they're telling me, because it doesn't make sense, because it's not logical. So here's
Right.
what is causing your symptoms. So or you've been told or coerced into thinking that only nerves refer symptoms, but muscles can refer symptoms. You know how you know that? And you're just a layperson? Because
Mhm.
one of the indicators of a heart attack is pain at the chest and the left arm, right? Is there anything wrong with your left arm? No. What is the symptom you're experiencing your left arm? It is a referred symptom from your heart. What is your heart? It's a muscle. So muscles can refer symptoms. So part of your rotator cuff that keeps your arm bone in your shoulder joint is called the infraspinatus. It's one of the four muscles. And what happens is you've strained that. And as a result of that being strained, when you go to lay on your side, instead of your arm bone staying directly under your shoulder, it kind of moves forward a little bit because you're not securing it because your muscle's weak. Well, as a result of the arm bone moving forward away from your shoulder blade, that stretches your rotator cuff and it causes the infraspinatus to refer a symptom down to your hand. How do you know?
Wow.
How do you know I'm right? Because as soon as you stand up, it goes away. You're no longer creating the irritation of the muscle.
And you know what? My when I lift my arm upwards, it was
Yes.
sore. It
Yes.
was it was sore. Like when I'm lifting like my elbow up,
Yep.
the where the like you said where the rotator cuff is, it was
Yes.
hurting, and I'm like, why does this hurt? And all
Oh
of
my
a sudden,
God, you have symptoms that actually join together to tell you what's wrong with your body. Wow, your body's doing what it was supposed to do. How do you like that? Isn't that
Mhm.
interesting?
Yeah, this whole time I thought I was dying.
You'd probably be moving towards that direction when they get to the point that they want to fuse your cervical spine for you. Then you may
Oh
be moving in that direction.
Oh no, I learned to stop doing all these surgeries. I mean, they start this process where they're like, "Oh, it's because you hit 45. Now you got to have surgery on this part and this part and this part." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? The last time I had surgery, like another thing popped up for me to have
That's
surgery.
right.
Then
Right.
after that, another thing popped up for me to have surgery. It's like once you start one surgery, you just start this whole domino effect, and now here you are 50 years old and you already said, "Oh, well, you're having conversations at a table with other people who are sitting around talking about, well, how many surgeries did you have? I have
Right.
8. Did you have 10? And you're like going back and forth trying to figure out who had the worst surgery or who had the best surgery.
Right. So I'm 61. I've been lifting weights for 36 years. I literally have put 60 pounds of muscle on. I've gone from 160 pounds to 220 pounds. I'm 6 foot, 220 pounds with a 34-inch waist. I ain't never getting no surgery. They ain't never
Oh,
gonna happen. I'm built like a brick shit house. Nothing's gonna happen to me.
I love it.
You want to not have surgery? Be built like a brick shit house, and you're gonna do great.
Wow. This is the best.
So just so you know, this thing that I've done to myself is what I've done for 30 years for 15,000 people. I would take a lady like you, I would evaluate you, I would figure out your symptoms, clearly indicating that you've got weakness of muscles of the rotator cuff and other muscles, and I will use targeted strength training, this understanding of the physics laws of weightlifting, and I will strengthen your muscles, and within 2 to 3 weeks, this is gone. As you sustain the strength, you'll never have it come back again. End of story. That's what makes my method, and it's the method that I created. There is no curriculum. There's no specialty. There's nobody in the world who's doing this. This is something I made up 30 years ago and have perfected over 30 years.
Oh, I think I would love to be your guinea pig, except I live in California and you live in Florida.
Ah, that's interesting because since 2015, I've been doing Zoom sessions treating people all over the world utilizing this method. So you are not unable to get the method. It's actually quite simple for you to get the method. You set up a Zoom session. The sessions are an hour and a half long. They're videotaped, so you get a copy of it. I'm on one side, you're on the other. I evaluate you. After I evaluate you, I then establish if it's muscular, which muscles. I perform the exercises, I demonstrate them, then have you perform them under my supervision. We make sure you're using the appropriate resistances, and that then gets sent to you the next day. That's the method by which you make sure you do the exercises correctly. We do follow-up sessions once every 2 to 3 weeks until you're pain-free and fully functional.
Oh, that sounds so good. Now, let me ask you, does the weight, can you tell, or does like fat have a lot to do with pain too? Like
So,
releasing?
yeah, so let's end that kind of bullshit too. So whatever you weigh, let's say you weigh, I don't care, let's say someone weighs 140 pounds and someone says, oh, because you're fat, that's causing your pain. That is to say that every single person over 140 pounds has to have the same exact pain as you. Do you think everybody who weighs more than you has the exact same pain as you? The answer is no. That would be psycho to think that, right? So,
well, the only reason why is because the distribution of fat. So if your fat is basically in your stomach, right, and then you have back pain, wouldn't that be like more pressure on your stomach, the distribution, pressure on your stomach?
Yeah, it's not pressure on your stomach. So basically, here's what you have to understand about gravity. Gravity is a vertical force. It's trying to push through your body to get to the ground. So if we look at you from the side, if you had proper balance of muscle, your ear, your shoulder, your hip, your knee, and your ankle would be all in alignment, straight down vertical, which would mean your center of mass wraps around that plumb line. And so all your weight runs through your heel and you would be great. You'd have no problems. If you end up having fat on the belly, that is what's called an eccentric load. That is a load that is created outside of that plumb line. It's in front of the plumb line, which means that if you were to become paralyzed, which way would you fall? Forward. Which means that something has to stop you from falling forward. Muscles in the back of the body. So by having a belly, it does nothing for the abdominal region. It's really not a factor there. It's a question that you've created an eccentric load in the front that has to be picked up by muscle in the back, which was not a force or a load that was designed to have to be picked up. So when it's an extra load. So this is my point to people. To tell people that the fact that their fat is the cause of their pain is not true, because I guarantee you, you spend, say, 2 months doing my exercises, strengthening your butt and your hamstring, I guarantee you, you have no pain, even with the same amount of fat in front of you. Right?
Okay.
On the other hand, is it good to have excess fat? No, that's not healthy. So I'm not telling people that having the fat isn't a good thing, or it should be considered not a good thing for general health. But stop telling people that it is the fat that is causing the pain. It is the eccentric load that, upon strengthening the appropriate muscles in the back of the body, that can be eradicated and absorbed, and you don't have to have pain just because you have fat on your belly. That's what I want you to understand.
Okay. The only reason I say that is because I have sciatica too, and it runs down my back, not necessarily down my leg, but I get it. I don't even know if it's sciatica. That's a self-diagnosis, but it is a sharp pain that uh feels like it. So
Where does
I
it
al-
run? It runs from your butt. What? Does it go down to your knee or not even to your knee?
not even to my knee. It's not even, I don't even think it goes past my butt.
Okay. So
Yeah,
basically, you've strained some muscles in your butt. Where is that, in the front of your body or the back of your body?
the back.
I believe it's the back of your body. So doesn't it sound like those muscles are being forced to overwork because you've created an eccentric load in the front of your body? And if you
Yeah,
learned how to strengthen those appropriate muscles, you would stop your symptoms?
yes.
Wow, what do you know? Analysis works. That's amazing. Understanding the body outside of what's taught in medical school actually can be beneficial to people. That's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, I've been knowing that my issues go further than probably that. I need the energy in order to do it, and that's like a whole nother story with dealing with CPAP machines and, tiredness and all that. I mean, I've lost 10 pounds before and I felt my energy come back, but then
Hmm.
I had to have another surgery, and then being laid up for like 4 or 5 months made me gain back the weight and then just made me tired again. So that's what I got stuck in, that sort of rut, along with a little bit of emotional stress. So
Right.
I'm trying to get back to that point where I was feeling good before I took on another surgery. And I just decided I'm just done with surgeries right now, that there's a lot better methods than going to do surgeries to think I'm going to fix something, because like I said, I just had a basic hysterectomy, just a
Hmm.
basic one. I don't even think that's appropriate to say a basic hysterectomy. And
Right.
that led to another thing. But the only reason why I had a hysterectomy was because I had fibroids that were making me like have excessive uh, bleeding.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that was leading from one thing to another, and like I said, it just goes from one thing to another, and there's supposed to be another surgery. Then the doctor wants to do injections in my hand, and then the other one wants to do injections in my neck and in my back, and I was like, oh no, forget it.
Yeah. Well, they're all schmucks. You have to understand the premise here. So
Mhm.
basically, if you go through medical school and you do 20 years of doing this crap and you've invested 250,000 bucks of your money and now you're caught up in stuff like that. And literally, even you could be the nicest person in the world and want to do a world of good for people, but you have to understand that if you are taught something, you're going to do it based on that education, even when that education indicates that what's being done is wrong. Let's be really clear. Do you know how many people in the United States suffer from chronic pain? Do you even have a remote idea?
All of them.
Yeah, total. How many people in the United States suffer from chronic pain?
I would say all of them,
It's
everybody.
130 million. 130 million, more than one out of every three. Worldwide, a billion people suffer from chronic pain. So, if their methodology of addressing pain and other symptoms is so effective, why over 40 years has the number of people suffering never gone down? It only goes up,
Mm,
right?
yeah,
So
that's
you got to understand it ain't working. And it takes a very strange, distorted mental case like me who enters school and is the one guy who says, you know what, this just doesn't sound right. I think there's something beyond that. And I'm going to go on my own and try to see if I can figure this out. And that's what happened. Let me make one point about your situation. So you're down, you're not feeling good. And here's the problem with a lot of people, they say, I got to feel better before I exercise because I need to get motivated. What you don't get is that the ultimate way of feeling better is the exercise. The exercise releases opiates in your brain, the same thing that like opioids would do. It's what makes us feel better. And so what happens is you get that little release in your brain and that makes you feel better and makes you begin to feel better about the exercise. You begin to become excited about the next time you're going to exercise. And then you start to get the physical benefits, the physiological benefits. Now you're on this path towards doing exercise, but you don't wait to do the exercises until you feel good. You start the exercises to make you start the process of feeling good. That's an important thing for you to understand. Plus, if you did exercise with me, I'm crazy. I'd make you get pumped up and feel good right away. So that would be a byproduct of working with me.
Well, I have all of the tools and stuff. I have a yoga ball. I mean, to be honest, before the surgery, I was doing it. I was getting it in, and I was getting to the shredded part and everything. And then when I was feeling pain and I was like, how is this happening? Like, why am I having this? And the doctor's like, oh, you have an ovarian cyst. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, well, having that surgery led to this situation because now, the body's looking for this missing part, and now it's trying to put things where they're supposed to go and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, I can't. I need to figure out, as a female who would have never thought to mess with God's creation,
Right.
decided to do it after like long thinking, years of thinking about it, and now it's happening. And then now someone who's always been like 120 pounds from forever, and now all of a sudden like these things are happening, and I'm like, I need to figure out some kind of way to focus my energy because I have two small kids. I need to be able to survive as long as I can until, at least until they get married, and
Yeah.
then I'll be like, okay, I'm good.
Right, but what's not part of the medical system and was basically eliminated as a result of the use of the MRI is the idea that your body is trying to tell you what the tissue that's in distress is trying to tell you it's in distress. It's giving you all the proper signals. You just don't know how to interpret it, obviously, but either do the people you're seeking care from. They're only interested in what the MRI tells them. So as a result of that, you're never getting to the point of saying, okay, I understand that the cause is muscle based on the presentation of symptoms. These are the particular muscles responsible, and these are the specific exercises used to use progressive resistance to get the muscles stronger until their force output is greater than the force requirement of my activities. And now I'm pain free and fully functional. That's the missing link to everybody, whether it's you or anybody else. The medical system has eliminated the idea that the body is telling you what's wrong with it. And as long as that's like that, how could you ever identify the tissue in distress that needs to be corrected to end its need to elicit the emergency distress signal of pain? You're never going to get there. And that's what my promotion is. The YAS method is that method. Its baseline mechanism for diagnosing is the interpretation of the presentation of symptoms of the body. That's what makes this, it's literally on its own the only method I'm aware of that uses that as its diagnostic model.
So here's a thing that would add to this. So I had to go for pelvic floor therapy, which I never knew what the heck that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was like a form of physical therapy, but just had to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you know what it is. It's supposed to be strengthening the muscle inside of the uterine wall, right?
Yeah.
And I went in there thinking that, I had to do certain, which I did. I had to do a couple exercises that had to do with like pelvic thrust and,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like strengthening down there. But not only did I have to do that, but I had to have some lady put her finger in my hoo ha.
Wow.
Yes, in order for me to do those pelvic muscle
Oh my
contraction and release and contraction, and that was a part of my therapy.
God. I gotta say, man, I don't know, man. I might have to join up as a practitioner in that thing because that sounds very interesting. That sounds like lunacy. That
Uh,
sounds like lunacy, man, to me.
well, I mean, you're talking about muscles and contraction and all that stuff, so it can't be too far off from what you're saying exercising that particular muscle because I did have pain around there, and the doctor was like, well, I don't see anything that shows that you have any kind of issues down there. This is after I had the ovarian cyst surgery.
Yeah.
And he's like, everything looks fine down there. I'm going to send you for some pelvic floor therapy. And, like I said, there was a lot of physical exercises, but one of those was her teaching me how to contract the muscles inside. And then some of it has to do with like bladder control. Not that I needed it, but
Right.
she also just said that it was something that could help relax. And she just said that it was just such a tightened muscle that it was just constricted where it was causing so much pain because
Yeah.
the body
And
the
then
body
what
was
happened?
so used to it.
Did you
Um,
did you heal
I
yourself from this?
did I what?
Did you heal yourself from this wonderful therapy? Did it heal you?
I don't have much contraction. I learned to release the muscle that was holding on to the pain. A lot of thrusting, a lot of thrusting. Yeah, I don't have a lot of pain that's down there.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that it falls under what your therapy is,
Well,
building up that
I would
muscle.
by definition, in 30 years, I can safely tell you I've never stuck my fingers in any woman's hoo-ha. So that's definitely out of bounds for what I do for a living. Um, so the thing is that, so I'll tell you, there's these muscles called the psoas muscles. They attach to all five lumbar spine, and they run diagonally through the abdominal cavity and then attach at the inner hip. And when these babies are in spasm, you'll feel incredible pain at the very upper portion, like where your thigh attaches into your abdominal cavity, right? And I'm telling you now, women have been told, oh, this could be fibroids and all this other kind of thing that relate to the female genitalia kind of concept. And it turned out they just had shortened hip flexors. So, I don't know what your story is. I have no idea, but I'm telling you now, these muscles run very close to where the ovaries are. So, one of the things you have to understand about your pain is thinking about what brings it on and what makes it go away. So, let's say that you're having pain in that area, but you say, well, when I sit, it seems okay. But boy, when I try to stand, wow, that pain comes on big time, right?
No,
Or
it's the opposite.
yeah,
It
what
was
was
the
that?
op- it was the opposite.
So if you sit too long,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
then eventually if you stand, it starts to diminish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying that your pain is postural in nature, correct? That's what
Right.
you're telling me. Well, there are specific muscles responsible for posture, right? Because posture is the culmination of the pulls of muscles. And I'm pretty sure that your pelvic floor is not the place where muscle develops to allow you to go from sit to stand, right? More
Right.
like what I'm talking about. The psoas muscles would be responsible for something like that, right? So that's
Mhm.
how you have to differentiate the muscles. It's not enough to say you have pain and you have muscles. You have to look at it for you. If your pain is muscular, you're probably going to find variations in your posture. You're going to find that your pain is associated with variations in movement or function. And once you understand that connection, that allows you to then break down which muscles are responsible for that improper posture or that improper movement pattern. And then I could muscle test it and then I palpate or touch the muscles, making sure that I know which ones are responsible. Then I can strengthen them. But the muscles that you're talking about, that everyone talks about this pelvic floor things, I can pretty much tell you those are involuntary muscles, right? Those aren't voluntary. Those are involuntary muscles that make up the pelvic floor. So the idea that somehow those are associated with movement, it just isn't going to work like that because movement is voluntary.
Hmm.
Don't you think what I'm saying makes sense? Isn't it logic?
I mean, I do have like muscle spasms, so that's involuntary.
No, no. The muscle spasm is a response, usually because the muscle has shortened severely. The reason that you get the shortening is because an opposing muscle that's supposed to do the opposite action is not strong enough. And in using that overly strong muscle, you shorten it till it goes into spasm. So the
Mm.
spasm might come after the activity, but it is generated by activity.
Oh, that's why it's usually when I'm combing my hair for a
Yes.
long period of time that I
Yes.
get that muscle spasm in between, like where my forearm is.
Yes. That's
Okay,
right.
you got the wheels turning on me.
Okay. So now let's talk about that. So let's take this to the next level. Yeah, I assume you're talking about your right hand. You comb your hair with your right hand.
Right.
Okay. So you're getting spasms in your forearm. You're getting numbness from your shoulder down your arm when you lay on your right side. Is there a connection between those two symptoms? Because they're both happening to you in your life at the same time. One's not happening a year from now. They're both happening at the same time, right?
Right.
So here's the magic. The muscles of your hand are designed to grab and manipulate objects. They are not designed to support the weight of the object. Okay?
Mm.
The muscles of the shoulder and shoulder blade are responsible to support the weight of your arm and any object that you're grabbing. So if that shoulder blade muscle, which is causing the numbness down the arm, has strained, it's going to make the muscles of the forearm have to grab and utilize those muscles more than they should to comb your hair, to brush your hair, which is leading to the spasms in your forearm.
Well, let me clarify. It's not numbness in the shoulder. It's more of a tightness.
But then there's numbness running down, you said, to your hand.
Yes.
Right. That's a referred symptom from the rotator cuff, the strained rotator cuff.
That makes sense.
So,
I must have overly did some. I'm always overly doing something, either lifting too many grocery bags. That's one of my biggest issue, and
right.
I have tried to do better and put them since I had my surgery and the doctor told me not to lift too much because of your quote unquote stenosis or your degenerate disc. So I bought
Yeah.
a little trolley. I'm a 45-year-old lady with a trolley, and I put my groceries in there and I pull it up and I go upstairs with it. But I lift up, that's proper English. I lift like 5 bags on one side, 5 bags on the other side, so I don't have to make any more trips to go back downstairs.
Right. So let me explain this concept. You're
Uh-huh.
being told that this is an overuse situation. Okay. They're
Mm-hmm.
trying to make it sound you should do less. It is not, there is no such thing in life as an overuse situation. There is a force requirement for every activity. It's always going to be the same force requirement. If you grab those 5 bags, it's always going to weigh the same. Your problem is that you're under strengthened. You don't have enough strength for that force requirement to lift those bags. That's why you're straining. So the answer isn't don't lift as many bags. The answer is strengthen the shit out of your muscles so they can take the 5 bags. Doesn't that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
So the bullshit about that you're going to hurt your stenosis and all that other crap, explain to me. Can you tell me what the doctors look like when that are telling you that? Are they 6 foot, 220 pounds? Probably not. Right?
No,
They have
they're
no weightlifting
tiny.
background.
They're tiny.
Right. They have no weightlifting background, and yet they're trying to tell you that you shouldn't lift weights. What is their background in weightlifting that allows them to understand how muscles affect bones or joints or pressure on spine?
They're more of a orthopedic specialist.
Right. So the word muscle is like Chinese to them. It's the truth. It's the absolute truth.
Yeah, I get it. I've been knowing for a very long time, but when you keep going to people and they keep telling you the same thing and you're like, I need a second opinion,
Yeah.
and you just need to find some kind of relief, and you don't want to go with the alternative of surgery. So this makes me feel a little bit better knowing that all I ever needed, because I've always been, like I said, a very go to the gym, healthy type of person. And then once after I had my twins, like there everything goes, you know. And plus, my kid's dad, he's like half. I don't want to blame his heritage for my eating habits, but I'll blame him. He's Italian and
Yeah.
Irish. They ate like he eats like pizza and just all kinds of stuff that I'm not supposed to eat. My body's probably not even equipped to take in. So, and then, you know, they tell you you're having twins. And of course, the misconception is you should eat more with twins.
Hmm.
Uh, and so, you know, my body, I think just my body's just not used to all of this. It's just not used to being the weight that it is, not used to being anything. I'm like a kid in high school, wake up every morning, do sit ups, push ups, and then go off to school. That's my life. I've always been like between 120 and 140 pounds. Yeah.
So the answer, the question then is there something you could do to reverse this? And the answer is build muscle mass. Muscle mass is living tissue. Every pound of muscle burns 30 to 650 calories per day. If you put 10 pounds of muscle on, you're burning 300 to 500 calories a week, right? A day, I mean. If over 7 days, that's 3,500 calories. That's a pound. So over 50 weeks, you could lose 50 pounds by simply having 10 pounds of muscle mass on you. Not doing any more activity, simply having that 10 pounds of muscle mass on you. That's the answer. No one understands this principle. It's not walking, it's not jogging, it's not running, it's not turning tires. It's none of that crap. It's making muscle mass. When you're sleeping, that 10 pounds of muscle mass is still burning that 3 to 500 calories a day.
Mm, okay. So, tell the listeners how to get onto your program so they can better understand it more visually.
So, if you really want to understand the method, the thing I would recommend is go to YouTube and just search Dr. Mitchell Yas and go to my website. There's 270 videos that explain everything you would need to know about my method. The videos talk about everything from head to toe, migraine headaches to plantar fasciitis, theoretical basis of how to properly diagnose all this type of stuff, right? Then,
Mhm.
if you have a personal question, you want to email me, you can email me at drmitch@mitchellyas.com, or you can go to my website, livewithoutpains.com, and there's a contact us button. If you this is hitting you in the head and you're like, oh my God, this guy seems to make sense, and I think this is something I want to do, you could schedule either an in-person session if you're in the Jacksonville, Florida area, or a Zoom session on the website. There's just a schedule now button. You click that, you can schedule a session for yourself. But basically, those to me are the best ways in terms of free content. 270 videos, it'll take you a year to get through all that content. But as you get through it, you're gonna you could tell that I talk like I'm a hacky loving beer drinking guy because that's who I am. I just happen to have this very, very bizarre part of my brain that gave me the ability to understand this system that I created. But I talk in a way that the average person fully can understand. I don't talk down to people. I talk to people on their level because it is critical. A person like you should never be in the circumstance you're in. You should never be floundering, questioning surgery, or I don't know an alternative. You should be able to have someone or some information to access, which then helps you understand what is the cause of your symptoms. If it's muscular, which I've shown it is in 98% of cases, this is the mechanism how I get rid of it. And you are now fully empowered. Right now, if you look at your situation, don't you think you're a prisoner? You're literally a prisoner to the medical system. Whatever they tell you, you have to basically accept by faith, not by understanding, because they don't explain things to you. And so you're left to be, should I take the surgery? I'm afraid of the surgery. I've heard bad things, but I don't know an alternative to the surgery. So you're kind of screwed. You're just in this limbo. And you stay in limbo enough, you start to have frustration, anxiety, hopelessness. And I hate to say it, but I've treated hundreds of people who became suicidal because they couldn't live with their pain any longer. So you need to have a way out of the system. And the way to have a way out of the system is you got to get to information that makes sense and you could begin to trust. And you could have someone who could help guide you in a way that gets you to the end result, which is to be pain-free and fully functional. And in Mike, as far as I'm concerned, I think I'm being used by a higher power. I think I've been given this information, and I am nothing more than a conduit to those people. So I'm always available. I've written 3 books. I've done a PBS special. I'm going to continue to be out there doing podcasts, reaching people and letting them know that there is a legitimate way for you to end your pain. And if your pain is muscular, again, which it is in 98% of cases, you're never going to hear that from the medical establishment. You could be out of pain in just weeks if you just understand what to do, how to do it, and just follow through.
Now, are your videos, do they have like some sort of workout instructions?
Yeah, so the videos basically are more the theoretical basis of like what causes plantar fasciitis. Some of them actually have some exercise information. The problem is that the understanding of how to do these exercises. This is not going to a gym. This is not a personal trainer. This is understanding weightlifting through the guise of physics. This is very complex understanding. The reason people get better in a session or two is because I know how to isolate muscles in a way and apply the appropriate resistance to get them respond to get stronger very quickly. So what I always suggest is if in fact this stuff starts to make sense, it's worth it to just schedule one session because that session will include the evaluative component, assuming it's muscle. I will then demonstrate how to do the exercises correctly. You'll do them under my supervision, and that is videotaped. So now you have the actual mechanism to use to then take this to the point of reaching pain-free and fully functional. But in my books, the exercise, my 2 last books, The Pain Cure RX and the Yas Method for Pain-Free Movement, those do have start and finish pictures for every exercise and an explanation of how to do that. Some people have the capacity to do this on their own, but it does take a little understanding.
So what are the names of your books?
The first book was called Overpower Pain. The second book was called The Pain Cure RX. And the third book was The Yas Method for Pain-Free Movement.
And how do you get those books?
Just go on Amazon and Google Dr. Mitchell Yas.
Okay, so those are like hardcover, they're not audible?
The Pain Cure RX is in fact audible.
Okay, so that's the one that you would recommend for me?
If you want to start, yes. So the Pain Cure RX looks at pain at the neck, the mid-back, the lower back, the gluteal region, the shoulder, hip, and knee. It won't go back down to the wrist and the elbow or the ankle or the foot because I gave them 432 8.5 by 11 pages of text. And they're like, we can't make a book as long as War and Peace. You're going to have to shrink it down. So I took some of the joints out. It really focuses on the primary joints where people have pain. And it explains how to do my methodology, the test mechanisms, and then shows you how to resolve the typical muscular causes, as I said, at the neck, the mid-back, lower back, gluteal region, shoulder, hip, and knee. So it would definitely work for you if you can get through it, understand the testing, and then try to do the exercises to resolve your symptoms. But carpal tunnel, unfortunately, would not be in that book. But the neck issue, the shoulder issue. But you don't have carpal tunnel, so it wouldn't even matter.
Well, that's what they say.
Yeah, but they're 100% wrong.
Do you recommend, what would you say recommendation for me to just start with a consultation?
I always think that's the best. Listen, everybody can try and do this, and I'm always for it. And if you look at reviews of my book, you'll see there are people who used it, and they were able to get through this on their own. My attitude is the sessions are $200, okay? For $200, are you willing to get the accurate diagnosis, make sure that, and I've kind of basically outlined exactly what your situation is, but I would do specific tests to confirm that, then prove that it's muscular, then show you how to set up the resistance bands you need to do the exercises, demonstrate the exercises, and then have you do them under my supervision and make sure you're doing them correctly and have that whole thing videotaped, which is then sent to you. So every time subsequently to do the exercise, you're doing it with yourself on the video. I don't see how anyone doesn't see that as the most direct route to ending this in the shortest period of time.
Now, do you accept insurance? It's on a whole nother level.
Well, so what you must understand is my general principle is that for 98% of the population, you do not have a medical issue. You have a fitness-based issue. So I don't consider myself to be any part, and I would never want to attach myself to the medical establishment. This is not physical therapy. This is not chiropractic. It's none of that. This is a fitness-based program I developed. So there's no insurance that's paid for this.
Okay. All right. Well, I just figured there's a lot of questions that would arise on the podcast. So I figured I would ask those questions ahead of time.
Yeah, I'm happy. Absolutely. I love to answer these questions. I want people to know what this is and how it works and what its cost is up front. Absolutely. I have no hesitation or concerns about that.
All right. Well, we're getting ready to close out. Do you have anything else you'd like the listeners to know, Doctor?
My biggest thing that I would say to somebody is that if you're getting treatment and you're now reaching the 6 month to a year period and you're still having the same symptom, it doesn't really matter what the practitioner is telling you. At some point, you yourself have to say, this probably isn't the right person for me, right? They're probably not addressing the tissue and distress creating my symptoms. If you have pain that's associated with activity, where you do something and that seems to make it worse, and then when you stop doing something like resting, sitting in a chair, or laying down, it gets better, you're probably assuming or reassuring yourself that you have a muscular cause. If your pain is not constant, which it would be if you had stenosis or carpal tunnel syndrome or a pinched nerve or meniscal tear, but that your pain seems to vary greatly based on activity or posture, it's reinforcing your problem's muscular. And just because you go to everybody in the medical system and they're telling you it's structural, doesn't mean it's structural. You got to start taking responsibility for yourself. You got to start thinking to yourself, my body is telling me what tissue's in distress, and you need to be able to interpret it and go to somebody who recognizes that and is in a position to interpret that for you. That, to me, is the lesson to be learned. It's the only way you could go to ever really end this.
It seems like since you're not being controlled by the mass of insurance and financial responsibility, that you're able to give people the truth.
Well, to be very honest with you, I think a very long period of time ago, I started to realize that for me to know what I know, that couldn't have been by accident. I must be being used by a higher power. So I don't speak for myself. I'm nothing. I'm just a guy. I'm a conduit. I have been given the gift of knowledge that I perceive as a blessing and a gift. And I see my moral and ethical obligation is on this in this world is to give that gift to as many people who seek it. That is my responsibility. And if anyone wants to challenge me and in the medical, I don't bring it. I have no hesitation. This thing has been so analyzed to such an extreme degree. You could hear in how I explain to you things that it makes sense and it could be explained in a way you could understand it. And that in itself should give you confidence that it makes that it's correct, because it's when someone uses fancy mumbo jumbo, that's when they're hiding something from you. So this is no job. This is no occupation. This is some whacked out quest I've been put on. And I will, for the rest of my days on this earth, continue to make it available to anyone that is seeking it. That's who I am. That's what I do.
On some real shit.
There you go.
Well, it was good talking to you, Dr. Yaz, and I look forward to probably talking to you in the future, of course.
I love it. Thank you for having me. I love the podcast. I love the realness of it. And please, by all means, when you feel comfortable and ready, just hit me up and we'll get you out of pain real fast.
All right, I will do that. Thank you so much. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I want to thank Dr. Yaz for being on the show today. He has given me a lot to think about, and he should give you guys a lot to think about. Always get a second opinion. Don't always rush off to have surgery. And the most important part is make sure you do a lot of exercise. If you can't do a lot, do at least a little bit, and that would help you out throughout your day. If you like our episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I am Stacy, your host. Thank you for joining me on my reality podcast show, and hope to see you on this cast again.